Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. Technically, this is our other talk, and I'll say more about that momentarily, but I am your host, Noor Kyle.
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
Yep. So, our other talk is the one that we do every third Sunday morning of each month so that we can accommodate the folks who can't make it to our usual time. So, this one is at 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, and our usual one is every Sunday, more or less, at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. I said a.m., like
Yeah.
10:30 a.m. for our other talk and 6:30 p.m. for our weekly talk. So, thank you for joining us. So, we'll have two today, and you're welcome to join us for one or the other, or both if you're feeling ambitious and energized. We love that. And what kind of, yeah, YouTube spiel?
Go for it.
All right. So, we love it when you folks support us by subscribing to our channel, of course, and liking our videos if you find the content interesting and
Oh, like
educational.
it even if you find it boring.
Yeah, I mean, it sure does us a favor with the algorithms, as we all know. And of course, join the discussion, leave a comment, answer other people's comments if they leave questions and you have something you think might be worthwhile to share. We really invite that engagement. And of course, you can engage with us via email. You can join our mailing list and you can join our Facebook group and you can donate if you feel so called. That is also a meaningful way to support us, which we appreciate because it helps us keep the lights on over here and continue to do the work that we do. Have I missed anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, good enough for today. All right, so our topic today is about the way of the red egg. Very mysterious, we've been told.
Very mysterious.
Yeah.
Super mysterious. So, the reference to the red egg goes back to Mary Magdalene, who the story has it that she went to Rome and had an audience before Tiberius Caesar. And people argue about why she went. Part of what was to lodge a complaint against Pontius Pilate for killing an innocent man. And she, for some reason, had an egg with her. And the standard story goes that she held it up and said, "He has risen." Doesn't say why the egg had anything to do with "he has risen." And Tiberius said, "He is no more risen than that egg is red." And it turned red. And everybody went, wow. And Tiberius didn't become a Christian, but there's a story that is deeper than that. And um, we'll get to that. So there are many ways to complete oneself. It's, the standard ones are uh, the meditation stuff, the various practices that one does. But a few times in history, we have seen uh, a different way. The most well-known of these is Rumi. How did Rumi reach completion? Any ideas?
Through the encounter with Shams?
Yes. Rumi, not only did Rumi reach completion through the encounter with Shams, Shams reached completion through the encounter with Rumi. It was a two-way street. And what it was experiencing divine love through human contact. Now, some people say, oh, they were gay lovers. We don't care about that. The important thing is how they interacted. After they met, supposedly they sequestered themselves for 40 days, which is a standard time for doing khalwat, for doing retreat. Um, and they spent that entire time experiencing the other. So there's one example. Another example is the Prophet and his wife Khadija. She doesn't get enough representation in Islam these days, but
She was there for the start of things.
she was there for the start of things, arguably perhaps the first Muslim, even before Ali.
And even before that, they were a team.
They were a team. Uh, they experienced a profound love between each other. And we know this because in the 25 years that they were married, the Prophet, though he could have, never took a second wife. He stayed focused on her.
And they had a strong marriage before anything having to do with Islam,
Yeah.
formally speaking, emerged.
And it was not a marriage of convenience.
Yeah, she respected him.
Yeah.
She proposed to him because she saw that he was someone that she could depend on.
Yeah.
And that she saw in him, qualities that she valued and respected.
Now, another example is the Prophet's daughter, Fatima, and her husband, Ali, because they also had this deep connection. It was more than just a marriage of convenience. We don't know as much about that, unfortunately, but another example would be Ibn Arabi and Nizam. That's one that a lot of people don't know about. Y'all know about Ibn Arabi and Nizam?
Some of you do,
Yeah.
but for those who don't,
For those who don't, Arabi gets to Mecca and he falls in with some dervishes. And the sheikh of the dervishes has a daughter named Nizam, who is uh, amazing. Not just beautiful, but intelligent, creative, poetic, and Arabi is completely transformed by his interactions with her, and probably vice versa. Arabi tended to talk about himself a lot, so we know his side of the story. And then we have Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Now, there's lots of stuff been written about uh, that she was his wife or they were lovers or any of that kind of stuff. And again, we don't care about that. That's not what's important.
it's kind of a neither here nor there thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not,
We don't care.
it's
Do you care?
beside the point. Well, I mean, I'm curious, but it doesn't change the underlying principles that we're talking about.
And so, especially in Rumi and Shams and Jesus and Maryam, we see a particular pattern. Can anybody think what that pattern is?
Or guess.
Yeah. Think about the story of Rumi and Shams. Easier to see there because we've been conditioned to Christianity in other ways. So, yes, well,
No, no. Yes. Well,
yeah.
yep. Sorry.
It had a very expensive price tag
Yes, it did.
and brushed up very clearly against the machine and what the machine expects and wants out of them as subjects as opposed to objects. It was not logical, and it I think made people feel very uncomfortable. Something on those lines.
It was all of that. As the story goes, uh, Rumi's students were extremely upset. Adrienne points out that John of the Cross and Teresa de Avila uh, are another example of this, as are Francis and Clare. Um,
Saint Francis and
and
Saint Clare.
yeah, but we most deeply see this in Rumi and Shams and Jesus and Mariam. And the big thing was, so Rumi basically drops everything and is spending all of his time with Shams. They are doing their practices together. They are discoursing. Uh, Shams is the one who knows, has the greater mystical knowledge. But to say that Shams was Rumi's sheikh would not be accurate. It was their interaction that created the polish that perfected both of them. And then Rumi's students, as the story goes, were so upset that they drove Shams away. And Shams goes off to Syria or someplace for a while. And Rumi is distraught. Anybody remember the opening lines of the Masnavi? The very first verses?
It it's it's something to do with the reed being torn from the bed.
Listen to the song of the flute. It cries with the pain of separation. It says, ever since I have been torn away from my reed bed, my song has set to weeping all of the hearts of the world. Everyone comes near me, but no one understands what it is that drew them here. A rough translation. That was the first experience for Rumi when he was separated from Shams for a while. Now, when that happened, Rumi stopped teaching. He didn't want anything to do with anybody, probably went into a depression, and it sucked. So Shams comes back. He was either invited back or he came back anyway. And again, Rumi spends all of his time with Shams, and his students are grumpy. So they decide to pull a Julius Caesar on him. Everybody gets knives, they attack him. Maybe they kill him, maybe he disappears. But the body was never found. This is the greater separation. Rumi feels completely cut off from his beloved, from the person that most represents connection with the divine, the oneness of being. And you could say the rest of his path was reconnecting to that in a higher level. Think about it. How could Rumi find connection with Shams if Shams literally disappeared?
By remembering him in his
Yes,
heart.
yes. by making rabita with him, by having that inner connection that nobody can break. And that was what finished him. That was what brought him to his own insan al-kamil. Now, here's a little thing. I don't know that this is true, but I'd like to think that it is true. Rumi has his tomb in Konya. Nice place, big place. Now the Rumi Museum. And Shams has a small tomb in Konya. He also has a tomb in Iran somewhere, but yeah, saints, what can you do? But the story goes that Rumi is not buried in Rumi's tomb. He actually instructed his son to inter him in Shams's tomb. And that's where he actually lies. Interesting, yes? No? Who cares? Now, we've mentioned all of these other people, and we're going to skip them for the moment and go right back to Jesus and Maryam. Now, in Islam, Maryam of Magdala has been basically completely forgotten. Never mentioned anywhere in Quran or Hadith that I can find.
Which is a shame.
Which is a shame. But by the time that the Prophet's life, she had been nearly erased from Christian histories, relegated to the position of a repentant prostitute. Well, no, by that time, yeah, I think so. By that time, because it was Pope Gregory who was around 5-something AD, 500-something AD, who came up with that story. Not true, no evidence for it, zero supporting documents. He just made it up. And it's a great way to disempower her. But even though she has been in some ways erased from the Gospels in many ways, we do know a few things about her life. She was an early apostle. She was an apostle, female apostle. And as a matter of fact, now she's known as the apostle to the apostles for a couple of reasons. But we know that she was very, very close to Jesus. We don't know what the relationship was. The possibility of their being married is more near-fetched than a lot of people might like to admit, because as a rule back then, rabbis were always married. Because what good is a rabbi without life experience? But we're not here to talk about that because we don't care. What is important is that she was utterly devoted to him. And vice versa, from what we could tell. In some of the non-canonical gospels, they talk about how Jesus loved her and would frequently kiss her.
Whatever that means.
Whatever that means, yeah. But just as with Rumi and Shams, a few centuries later, Maryam's beloved was taken from her. And think about this, if you read the Synoptic Gospels, she was the first person to experience the resurrection according to them. She was the woman at the tomb. Yeah, I think it was Luke said that there was three women there, but the oldest gospel suggests that there was one, and that was her.
None of the guys were there.
None of the guys were there. The guys were hiding. The guys were afraid that they were going to get killed too. Mariam is the only one who didn't care. She wanted to be close to her beloved. And I would suggest to you that the entirety of the resurrection story has to do on a certain level, this is heretical and we don't care, with Mariam achieving completion through the longing for her beloved, then encountering him on a completely different realm, and she's finished. Some Sufis suggest, because this is the only place in the Middle East that I have ever heard any of these references. Some Sufis, mostly Turkish Sufis, because they had to hang out with the Orthodox Christians for a long time, suggest that she was the actual inheritor of the mantle of Jesus. She was the next teacher. And that's totally heretical. But we suggest that it was through that profound encounter with the beloved and the losing oneself in the field created between lover and beloved that created perfection in both of them. And that is the secret of the red egg. That's what the red egg really represents, is, and what does, especially in those cultures, what does the color red represent?
Blood.
Blood, yes. What else?
Passion.
Passion, yes, exactly. A connection so passionate to the divine that that is what perfects the person. And it's not just any connection, but a connection through the other.
Mushtaq, may I ask just
Yes,
a
please.
question?
Yes.
When we're saying passion, we're not we're still awake in this passion. It's not like we've lost all our senses, because you've got blind passion and you've got this divine passion you're speaking about. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yeah. And we need to make a distinction between compassion and desire. It's like, I see a beautiful woman. Yeah, that's you. And she's desirable. You know, my hormones look at her hormones and go, yeah, that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a profound yearning for connection with the other, to experience the other as part of us, as creating a field of lover and beloved. So this is not quite Layla and Majnun. A little bit, but not quite.
This is more mature.
Yes, it's way more mature.
So it may not be that that's entirely absent, but it's more mature than that.
Yeah. I seriously doubt that it was absent, especially in the case personal opinion, not the opinion of anybody else's. I'm pretty sure that Jesus and Mariam were hooked up for any number of reasons. I would not be at all surprised if she were his wife and he was her husband.
We gasp. What
Yeah.
about the church?
What about the church? The church is so anti-love that they would never admit to that.
Intimacy.
Yeah, intimacy is not something that the Christians can get behind. Thank God for the prophet for that, amongst other things, because he made sure that everybody understood that life needed to be led fully, and a connection with another was part of that. Adrian, yes.
Well, there's this salute in Central Asia for dervishes called Ishq Bashad. Ishq Bashad means be love.
Yeah.
And for what they respond, Ishkast, which is love is. You know,
Yeah.
partially trying to attract attention or to wish to each other, being immersed in that loving connection that transcends. But of course, it's different than what you're talking about. You're talking about the completion with another human being specifically, and then have like this bipolar in the good sense, in the sense of two poles, you know, like a
Yes.
bipolar system that's nurturing each other and illuminating or affecting each other in that loving, consuming, unifying way, right? Huh. I mean, dude, the there are so many clues, man,
Yeah.
and they have been all the time, all before our noses, the whole time. And as you say, you know, thanks to the prophet to, you know, to bring that normalcy of human interactions, not to a phony, you know, restrictive, but on the other hand, being all inclusive, which, you know, just by I was listening some speeches about Ibn Arabi recently, and there was this heart that has to be encompassing all attributes, you know, be malleable to assume all forms and then complete itself. You know, it's not going to happen before you are able to be so inclusive, so loving, so universally loving, to the macro and to the micro. Um, without passing that, there's no passing the gate. There's no gate. There's no nothing. And that's only that awareness of that vibration, right? Red red egg. And why the egg? Why the symbolism of the egg?
Yeah. A lot of that was lost to the Christian legends about it. The egg has historically, from as far back as Egypt, been a symbol for the cosmos.
Yeah, you know, you hear the phrase the cosmic egg.
Yeah. And I think that the real dialogue had more to do with that, and then it was rewritten to be about the resurrection. But I think it was the illustration of the human's journey from the nucleus to expanding past it. We get a little bit of hint of that in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, what's left of it. The good parts vanished, which I find interesting.
The juicy part.
The juicy parts are not there. But even in what is left, there are some hints that the egg consists of the yolk, the albumin, and the shell. And each of these, notice there are 3 of them there. Each of these represents one of the 3 forces. And there's a lot to it, more than we can talk about in the time that we have. But the egg represents the field of being, we can say, the cosmic egg. So that's why the egg, really, I'm pretty sure. And the egg probably contained, the metaphor of the egg contains instructions on how to be both the lover and beloved. And we'll probably have to talk about that more. Means I can draw funny eggs.
And possibilities, right?
Yes.
That's a good
Because
metaphor as well.
Because that's, it's like music that we've been talking about recently. One note encompasses all possibilities.
Yes.
They're all in one note. Because of the note and the behavior of the overtones, in itself, it contains all the possible, the ability to relate to other notes and to be all potential melodies and music in itself, all in one single sound. And seeing the egg as a similar symbol too, right?
Mm-hmm.
As being all possibilities of creation that are encompassed in this tiny thing, right? Maybe if it's a dragon egg, maybe it's not so tiny. but but to be able to oh, it's so beautiful. Thank you for bringing that up, man. Yes.
Yeah. And so, how does one adopt this into one's own life? Thoughts? In a time of incels, how do you be the beloved? How do you be the lover?
The first thing that comes to my mind is the merging part of it, right?
Say more about that.
So there's no being lover or beloved without that unifying aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't love if you don't leave yourself, and you're not loved because if you're not leaving yourself to let yourself go. So that itself has a little, like a wink to the fana thing, fana with no expectancy of having any baka, any subsistence. That's the only thing, if there is such a thing. If you are granted with that thing, then it's because it was given to you. You shouldn't expect that. And on the other hand, I was thinking about something that totally flew away. So let's leave it there. Oh yeah, Fana and Baka being an update of itself every second, right? Because there's no repetition of any moment, as it's like the multiplicity of the multiplicity all the time, and yet we see a sequence of it, which is a permanence of what was before, unfolding constantly before our eyes. Again, the egg would come as a beautiful symbol to that, because it's before life, but it's alive and has the, well, whatever. Then we can go into between who came first, if the egg or the hen, and many other metaphors.
So back to the story of Rumi and Shams. So they meet, and Rumi takes him home. And he, gives Shams hospitality, and Shams tests him. He wants to see if Rumi is a true lover. So the first thing he does is he says, in the evenings, I like to drink wine. This is a Muslim country. So instead of being horrified and deciding that he is a terrible, evil person, Rumi goes to the Jewish quarter and buys a bottle of wine and brings it to him. Gets racier from here. If you have kids, hold their ears for a second. And so then Shams doesn't drink the wine, as far as I know. But then he says, and I really enjoy the company of, I really enjoy sexual expression. And Rumi offers him his wife. And
eyebrows raised.
Eyebrows raised. And then Shams says, no, I like boys. And Rumi offers him his son. Eyebrows doubly raised. None of this is real. He's just being tested. It's like, how surrendered can you be to the beloved? It's the old, go sacrifice your son on the mountain thing. So that's pretty weird. That's one of these things that freaks people out. The important thing to realize is that Shams had no intention of actually drinking wine or anything else. He had the intention of seeing how surrendered Rumi could be.
Don't try that at home.
Yeah. But it does bring up the question, if you were to find the beloved, how surrendered could you be? And this is difficult because, especially these days, as far as I can tell, if you have 1,000 potential beloveds, 999 or more of them may actually be total assholes. And you don't want to be surrendered to them like that. So there's a paradox here. How do we resolve that paradox?
And it's also like you are surrendering, but not to the point where you become non-existent, because how can someone love you if you're not even there?
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of have to hold your center even as you're surrendering. And that
What she said
is really challenging. Because you can get sucked in either direction. For some people, they get sucked into the surrender part and they disappear. For some people, they get stuck in the holding their center part, and you can't reach them. It's almost like they don't want to be reached.
And you have to have the right beloved. I would bet dollars to donuts that almost everyone here has found the wrong beloved at least once in their life.
Maybe a couple times.
Maybe a couple of times. It has been known to happen.
And maybe you had
But
it.
I found the one though.
What's
Yeah,
it?
that's the important part. You find the one.
What was I gonna say?
What were you going to say?
Um, I think you can get tastes of this path of the red egg even in relationships that ultimately don't work out. However, where do I want to go with that? I think, because some people will learn a lot from the painful relationships they have. They are not quite with that subject to subject beloved.
And Yusuf asks an important question here. Is the surrendering to the beloved one or to love itself? Yes. Humans are humans and they will human. I mean, what do we know about Shams? He dressed in black. He was the original Turkish man in black, for those of you who are familiar with American music.
Goth before there was goth.
Goth before there was goth. So as a human being, he was probably not perfect, but through him, perfection could be experienced for Rumi. Their relationship became synergistic because both of them, and here's the important bit, both of them were looking at God through the eyes of the other. Their point was not to have a relationship. Their point was to find the divine reality. And they could see that in the eyes of the other. And they worked together. That was why they were always huddled alone. They were doing their practices. They were working together. They had the same goal. So, you know how everybody here at one time or another has been carrying something that was really heavy, and they've had a friend run up and grab the other end of it and say, "Here, let me help." And all of a sudden, the heavy work becomes much lighter. It's a little bit like that.
Jonathan.
Yeah, to try and answer your question of how do you know who could be suitable. I think you've got to test the other person out. You have to
Yeah, go
surrender.
buy me a bottle of wine.
You've got to surrender yourself. You have to make yourself vulnerable. You've got to give the power to the other person to influence you. Let them guide you and let them lead you somewhere. And then decide, how did it go? Is this place that I've been led to a place I want to be? And then if it is, then you switch roles. I would hope that the other person would then surrender themselves to my influence, and I would take them somewhere. And if they were happy with that, then we can proceed in that manner until trust builds. Of
Any
course,
other?
I'm assuming that we're both on some kind of spiritual path.
Yeah, and that's a must.
We've talked about this before. It doesn't have to be the exact
No,
same
even if you
flavor.
are the same, you're both dervishes of the same order. it's still going to be two different paths.
You're still two human beings with your own centers doing things in the world. And there's this third, I guess we could say a third force, right?
Yeah.
That ties you together on your separate journeys. And I mean, it's thank you, Jonathan, for that, because yeah, we talk about due influence as well.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what you're talking about, Jonathan, that mutual due influence.
Exactly, right.
And so what does that look like? It can look like anything. You know, in our relationship, we encourage each other to do the good things and not to do the bad things. Well, mostly not to do the bad things. There is the occasional cinnamon roll.
Or do the bad things together, right?
Yeah.
Ideally. Yeah, and we do both support and challenge each other.
Yeah.
And we consider that part of nurturing the relationship.
Yeah. We're working towards Rumi and Shams here. Though neither of us is going to disappear anytime soon,
No.
inshallah.
What does that say? It is from
Anissa.
Anissa says, unified, but still use separateness as a way to see each other through each other's lenses, as a way to gain. There it is. Okay. As a way to gain different perspectives on oneself, having open understanding of the beloved, to also be able to see their growth. Okay, I see. Having open understanding of the beloved, to also be able to see their growth and aid them along their path. Absolutely. And Mart asks, does the beloved have to be another human?
No, but it helps. I will tell you, though, that if you have a really good dog, it's almost as good as a human. Sufis like dogs. I know a lot of Muslims don't like dogs, but dogs are the ultimate lover. I mean, if you want to see how to do this, watch dogs. Watch a dog that loves its owner. But it's nice to have a human because uh, it's harder to lie to yourself. Yes, humans challenge you. A dog mostly doesn't challenge you.
It's a different
Yeah.
kind of challenge. They have a more childlike quality.
Yep.
So it's hard to have a peer-to-peer relationship with a dog. And that is something that really clues us into why this path of the red egg is so powerful, because it's engagement with a peer.
Yusuf says, if you want challenge, try cats. There is some truth to that.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm much more of a cat person myself.
I love both. I grew up with cats and I had to warm up to dogs.
Yeah, I'm the opposite.
Yeah.
I had to warm up to cats, but they will worm their way into your heart.
Yeah.
So, so this is, without a doubt, the most challenging methodology for awakening that I know of. I mean, it's easy to go up on a mountain and be a celibate monk and not relate to anybody, not talk to anybody, achieve a certain amount of awakening, but you're kind of useless. I mean, I know that this is an unpopular position, but being a monk on a mountain for your entire life is selfish.
But what if you're praying for the world all the time?
Yeah, who supports you while you pray for the world? I mean, there's actually a hadith of Jesus about that. Jesus is walking along the road and he comes to a man who was sitting all bent over like this, and he comes up to me and said, "What are you doing?" And um, the man says, "I am praising God." And Jesus looks at him and says, "Who supports you while you are sitting here praising God?" And he says, "My brother supports me." And Jesus looks at him and said, "Your brother's prayers are better than yours." And that's something to bear in mind. And that was a hadith verified by Al-Ghazali. That's where I got it.
So that was the saying of Jesus, you
Yeah,
said?
hadith of Jesus.
Isa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeshua.
Isa, Yeshua, that guy. Jesus is just the name that Christians use because they can't pronounce Yeshua.
So point being, theoretically, this idea that the practical details are where, let's say, the divine is watching us to see how we're gonna behave, how we're gonna treat others in the world. And as it's been said, God doesn't need our prayers. They're for us.
Yeah. God is probably bored with our prayers by now. Oh, Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz? So, what do you think? Do
I
you
think
think
it's,
that? Yes.
sorry, Mushtaq. I was going to say, I think it's a great reminder that we don't have to be alone to voyage towards the divine. We can do it in good company, and in this case, some special company that gives the whole process a boost. So, yeah, I really enjoyed tonight. Thank you so much.
Good. You know how this was introduced to Europe? This concept was introduced to Europe. Anybody besides Adrian who will know the answer to this? Yes. Well,
Fi amor.
Yeah, through Finamore, but what group?
The troubadours.
The troubadours, that's right. The troubadours who were heavily Sufi influenced. People like Eleanor of Aquitaine and her father and such spent much of their life in the Middle East, in what were called the Holy Lands, or as I think of them, the Unholy Lands. Um, and when they returned, they brought musicians with them because European music at that time was just church stuff for the most part. And so they brought back this semi-secular music, plus this entire interesting concept of the beloved. And they introduced the mystery of the red egg into Europe through the troubadours. And if you want to know more about that, look up the concept of fin amour, Fin amour.
And I think we did a talk about
We did, yeah, we've done
troubadours.
a little talks about that from time to time. And it probably helped. Nothing else, we got some good music and some new instruments.
New jams.
New jams, yeah.
They reshaped
Mhm.
culture everywhere.
Yeah.
Because that became the norm in that time, at least in Europe. I mean, the Middle East was already plagued by music and poetry and everything. Middle Ages in Europe were a little dry.
Yeah. And it was fortunate that we had Eleanor of Aquitaine founded the courts of love. And if you don't know who she was, go watch The Lion in Winter. She was a wife to two kings, the mother of Richard the Lionheart. And she and her daughter ran the courts of love in Aquitaine, and which is an interesting area of the world, Occitan, uh, in between Spain and France. This big strip of land that where they didn't speak French, they didn't speak Spanish, they spoke a whole different language.
Well, Catalan actually comes much more from that root.
Yes. And there's one other regional language, I can't remember what it is, but uh, to the west of Spain, northwest of Spain. It's where my friend the fencing.
Bable.
Yes.
What was that? I didn't hear it.
Bable became like a dialect
Yeah.
that is spoken in partially in Extremadura, partially in Asturias, and in that part between Aragon and Catalonia. And it's being revived lately.
Yeah. And you have really amazing music coming out of that period. Totally different, with totally different lyrics to it, because what they call courtly love, which was a side blow of fin amour, became very, very popular and important. And there were rules for how you interacted with the beloved. And that was very, very interesting. And the beloved was almost never your wife or husband. But we are digressing a little bit here.
So why did we talk about this today?
Why did we talk about this today? Didn't have anything else to talk about. That's why.
Well, you said, I may be wrong, maybe I misunderstood, that Mary Magdalene has a feast day now.
Yes, that's right. Thank you for bringing that up. The 22nd of this month, which is tomorrow, is the feast day of Mary Magdalene. She didn't used to have a feast day. It was actually Pope Francis that elevated her to having a feast day, and who officially referred to her as the apostle to the apostles. And her feast day is tomorrow. That's what inspired me to this. I totally forgot about that.
Okay.
See, that's why you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that merits a bathroom. I mean a bath and a toast.
Yes. So, it is a good time to remember her as someone who reached her completion through longing for the beloved, because she spent the rest of her life fostering that spiritual connection, from what we can tell. So enjoy the feast day of Mary Magdalene. Who haven't we heard from?
Yusuf, how about you? What's on your mind?
Um, I believe this is maybe one of the most heavy and painful topic of your entire history. And this is a method very different from other methods you are teaching. And it has very different aspects, but love, I mean, that was because I asked about is it to the beloved or to love itself? Because we may not be that fortunate to find someone like Rumi did. So, but we can love something, as Matt asked. Should it be a human or something else? I've heard from some Sufi recently to train oneself to love. He says you can start with a cup of coffee. If you drink your
That's
daily
easy.
coffee, you can try to enjoy it, deeply love it, and so on. And I don't know about I don't know if it's about more the emotional center. It is because it's deeply connected with emotions, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why maybe it is too difficult to talk about, to explain it. And yeah, this sohbet was very painful, Mushtaq.
My
Yeah,
apologies, but this is a dangerous subject.
yeah,
And my sense is that the beloved is always there.
yes,
And if you are not fortunate enough to find them, you maybe have not been looking.
yeah.
But that's harsh. So, Ian has a question, but yeah, this is a painful and dangerous subject. We would not have spoken of this subject 6 years ago when we started this. We would have just left it to the wayside, because this is the kind of thing that gets you burned at the stake or stoned in the marketplace.
Mart says, maybe babies cry because they are separated from the beloved.
That there's a lot of truth to that.
Ian.
Yeah, I've got a couple of things. One is that although you just said that maybe you don't find somebody because you're not looking hard enough, it really
Not hard,
strikes.
not hard enough. It's not hard enough. But go on.
Oh, yeah, okay. What I was meaning is it strikes me that it's not a path you can set out to do intentionally, because just from the rare number of cases that we can talk about, um, it seems that not many people really come across the person that they can do this with.
Yeah, I don't know about that. It seems like that.
And the second thing I wanted to just ask whether what your opinion about this was. I wondered if there, to what extent there might be a relationship between this and Bhakti yoga.
In my experience, almost none.
I thought that's what you'd probably say, but I still
Yeah.
have to throw it in there.
Yeah, bhakti yoga is kind of a one-way street.
Yeah, yes.
Adrian says, love itself and the beloved could perhaps be one and the same thing. And yes, here's the question. You want to find the beloved. What has to change in you in order to do that? You all know the story of the lover comes to the door of beloved and knocks and says, and the beloved says, who's there? And he says, it is I. And the beloved says, go away, you're not a real lover. And so the lover goes away, and sometime later he comes back and he knocks. And the beloved says, who's there? And the lover says, it is you. And the door opens. So that suggests that there is a qualitative change within you that is necessary in order to find the beloved. And oh yes, Rabia and her sister, that's such a good story. It's like my favorite Rabia story. Y'all know that one, right? We've talked about that one in the recent past.
I don't know if I mentioned that particular story.
So Rabia is walking through the marketplace and there's this dude following her. And he comes up to her and says, you are the most beautiful woman in the world. Can I marry you?
Mhm.
And she says, oh, I'm not that good. My sister, who's coming up behind you, is way more beautiful than I. And the man turns around and there's no one there. And he turns back and looks at her. And Rabia says, if you were a true lover, you would not have looked.
Yes, Noor did tell that story in the Rabia
Yeah.
episode.
Kind of reminds
We
me.
repeat ourselves. It's because I'm getting old or something.
Everything's tied together.
Yeah.
Well, repetition helps remembering.
Yeah. So, Ian, I want to make sure, did you get to finish your thought before?
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
So who have we not heard from or not heard much from? We haven't heard much from Brian.
Hey there. Yeah, so I really like the idea of connection through remembrance, because a lot of times I think that people think that connection has to be physically, but it can be just as real through remembrance. And it reminded me of a part in Conference of the Birds where it says, "True lovers always leave together." And I guess it seems like the goal of this synergistic relationship we're talking about would be to um, help bring one another towards completion and closer to the divine reality.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But amazing talk. Thanks.
Thanks, Brian.
Who else have we not heard much from?
Mart?
Mert, what do you think? Are we crazy or what?
I don't know if you are crazy, but it makes sense to me, the things you are saying. I don't know if my voice coming clear because my
Yeah.
connection isn't very good.
Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah, you're loud and clear.
Okay. I was thinking about the Jung's anima and animus archetype.
Yes.
It may be connected to this.
I am sure that it is.
Because I think Jung, in his Red Book, he was crying to his anima about this helping him to realize some things, maybe. And that's why I asked, actually, does it have to be another human? So maybe it can be a fantasy product. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that.
I think it's worth exploring.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily the case that there's only one way to
Or
do
even
this.
only one human.
That's a good point too. I wanted to ask you what you thought about that.
Yeah. I remember Lazarus Long, who was a fictional character, saying, given enough time, you could learn to love every good and decent person in the universe. And I'm pretty sure that that's true. And some people are going to be more lovable than others. Like you, you're more lovable.
Gosh.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said about this not being restrictive.
Yeah. And that's important. And remember, in the case of both Rumi and Mariam, they did most of their work after their beloved had disappeared from the world.
And that's where remembrance really comes to the fore. Not that it isn't always, I mean, even sitting here together, we are connecting, we are doing remembrance of each other, even elbow to elbow.
Yeah. I'll reach out. I'll go poke.
But when we are not together, whether that's, me going on a trip or mortal separation, remembrance continues.
Yeah. Yeah. Who else do we need to pick on before we wrap this up? Let's see. We've heard from Yusuf. We've heard from Brian. We've heard from Ian, Mort, Wael. We've heard from Adrian. Anissa, do you have any extra thoughts?
No.
No.
She shared some very
she
nice
shared
thoughts.
some good stuff, but I always like it when she talks.
Me too.
Yeah.
She's a cutie too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys have made some really lovely contributions.
Yes. In what is admittedly an extremely difficult topic.
And as Yusuf said, painful.
Yeah.
I think about that when this topic comes up. But I think there's also a call to think outside the box too.
That's all I got to
Yeah,
say.
mysteries of the red egg.
Yes.
Somewhat
We'll
revealed.
probably talk about this more at some point or another. But
Yeah.
right now, I'm going to switch this over to Brady Bunch mode. And here we are.
Thank you so much, everyone, for a pretty lovely and heartfelt conversation. And whatever you need to do to kind of tend to yourself if this conversation hurt, please take some time to do that. It's important because you're your own beloved, or you should be. So keep that in mind too. Okay, so we can wave to each other, wave to everybody watching on the replay, and we will see you in just a few hours at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time. Take care, everybody.
Take care.